okay, I'm going to say this. This is actually maybe a hot take. As a GM, I'm not interested in burdening myself with another layer of trying to fool the players with roles, right? I don't. I feel like this is beyond what my goals are as a game master, and it's like extra work, and it's also, I think, a ping on player agency. And I will even go as far as to say that if you're not careful, you could hurt your players' trust if you go too far down that road. Dave's Imagination said, just watched the video about the concept of subtle roles. This is for certain roles, the DM rolls for a character and does not reveal the result, but the DM does use the role's value to give information. Do you mean they make the roll for the player character? Like, so they make a roll for them instead of asking them for the roll? Or do you mean like for an NPC? I think what you mean is for the player character, is I think what you mean. Stuart says, I do not like subtle rolls. Yes. Dave says, but if the roll was done as a subtle roll, then GM rolled for the player and the player doesn't know it was a bad roll. So the player might trust the information, even though it might be bad. Stuart says that's what it means. Dave says thus giving a more realistic result. Crossheart says, I've heard of this. It's more for immersion. Okay, this is a good question. And here's how I want to handle this kind of thing. Okay, now there is such a thing as the character failing their check and not getting as much information. But then there's a difference between that and maintaining more immersion for the gamer. Okay, so, and I have to say, I'm not a fan of, and what you're calling subtle roles, I have done before. I've never heard them called subtle roles, but I've heard of this. Okay, so when I feel like a player deserves to know whether their character succeed or failed, and they get the chance to role play realistically. This is what I believe about this. So I don't think I would do a subtle roll. What I would do is, I would say to Stuart, roll me a perception check. And then Stuart rolls, and maybe Stuart, the human, says, oh man, I rolled a 3. My character probably doesn't see anything. And then I might laugh and say, your character sees that there's fog. Oh, it's so foggy here. And then, Stuart might realize, okay, well, there's more to see, obviously. But see, Stuart, I think, and this is the way I believe in it, and this comes down to player agency, because I think Stuart deserves to be privy to know that his character failed, because he should get to decide how his character is going to role play through that failure as part of that character's story. But this is different from me trying to fool Stuart, right? So if Stuart's like, my character's going to look into the fog, and I'm like, hide, make little roll, look at Stuart. I subtle roll a 3. I tell Stuart, your character realizes there's really only fog out there. Definitely no enemy army, nothing like that, right? So then, Stuart, for his character, maybe he says, well, can I roll? And I might be like, side eye, acting a little sus. You don't have to roll. I already told you what you see. So now I might be trying to fool Stuart, the human. Now, I can see that this is an effect. This is like a fourth wall effect. Okay, this is a different kind of effect in a game. This is where you're trying to give the player a more immersive experience for them. However, hello friends, GM Philosophy here. I hope you are enjoying the video today. Now, I just want to take a quick moment and let you know that you can grab my premium ebook right now, The Advanced Art of TTRPG Game Mastery. This is 50 pages that contains 24 years of gaming wisdom packed into an easy to read and implement ebook. This ebook is all about how to run emotionally resonant games that will keep your players wanting to come back, wanting to game with you. I've had many successful games at my table, some of them spanning a decade or more. And this book is packed with the lessons that empowered me to do this. Hard-learned lessons that took me years to learn. If I would have had this ebook in the beginning, it would have saved me years of time and effort. And I am making it available to you today. Link is in the description. Plus, this is going to help me support the channel and all the good things we do here to empower game masters to run better games. Thank you so much for your awesome support, and I hope you enjoy the ebook. Make sure you grab it. Do not miss out on this amazing deal. And with that being said, thank you so much, and let's get back to the video. Dave says, I check for traps. If I roll a 3, all of a sudden, everyone else wants to check too. Yes. So that's another thing, is that once that information goes out, the other players are also privy to it. Now, what we have here is we have a situation where the players, they see through the facade. They see through the fog of the role play, right? They're seeing the reality that is beyond the reality their characters see. And what you're talking about with subtle roles is hiding that for the players to give them a more immersive experience, maybe even fool them into thinking that things are okay when they're not. Thus, there's a big emotional reveal if they do step on a trap or they do encounter an army in the fog that they didn't see. However, I do not believe it is my job to give that kind of experience to players. I don't think that's really my goal. My goal when I sit down to role play with characters is for us to collaboratively tell the story of the characters. Thus, I'm not a fan of subtle roles because I don't think it's my job to have to give Stuart immersion in the sense that Stuart gets fooled. I think it's my job to give Stuart immersion that allows him to tell the story of his character. And then within that, Stuart also has an overhanging view, a God position view to see deeper, and he should get to make decisions about what his character is going to do. It's to role play that out. That's the way I prefer to go. And you're right. When you roll a 3 to check for traps, suddenly everyone is like, oh, there's probably a trap. But good role players will handle that differently. They'll be like, oh, my character doesn't even think about traps ever. And they just stroll on through. This is a great role play moment. Players who role play this way should get like a heroic inspiration because they role played it out so well. They didn't metagame. So, I think that if you're in now, I'm not trying to say that subtle roles are bad. That's just maybe a different set of goals that some GMs might have. I do not burden myself with those goals. I burden myself with the goal of empowering the players to tell the best story possible. Dave, okay, so Bert says, I've done subtle roles for characters before, more for narrative purposes. It's important not to do this often so as to keep player agency. Or I'll do a subtle role if they're in a riveting conversation and I don't want to cut in with can you roll this for me real quick? Dave says, yeah, my guys aren't always the best role players. Okay, so that's another thing too, is like different levels of role play in the players make the game experience much different. And I'm not trying to say that GMs shouldn't do this. Crosshair says some players might enjoy it. You should just ask them. I think that you could ask them, but I mean, I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't even ask them because I just don't. I almost have okay, I'm going to say this. This is actually maybe a hot take. As a GM, I'm not interested in burdening myself with another layer of trying to fool the players with roles, right? I feel like this is beyond what my goals are as a game master. And it's like extra work. And it's also, I think, a ping on player agency. And I will even go as far as to say that if you're not careful, you could hurt your players' trust if you go too far down that road. Now, playing with your players' trust can be an effect, and it's not always a negative effect, right? It is not. Some GMs may really excel at this, and they like to play with that as an effect. I personally try to always maintain a certain level. I always maintain a certain level of player respect in the sense that like me and the players are on a certain level of sharing information, and I try very hard not to deviate from that, with some rules exceptions. For example, not too long ago, I had a character who for several sessions she looked like a little girl with scars on her face who had survived a dragon attack. Come to find out, she was actually the dragon, polymorphed into a girl who had set a trap waiting for the reinforcements to come. And now she was with them gathering information as she went along with them. Now the players all rolled insight and perception checks on her, but their rolls were not good enough that they were able to see through the facade. I also did not share this with the players. I didn't say to the players, now above game, you don't know this. She's a dragon, dun dun dun. I kept this a secret. However, I didn't keep it a secret in the sense that I like rolled hidden rolls on their behalf. I kept it a secret in the sense that their characters didn't identify it. And thus I achieved a level of player. I was able to pull the wool over my players' eyes, but I feel like I did it without changing the rules of information sharing between us. They were allowed to make their checks. They were allowed to know your checks weren't that great. There's something weird about her, but I didn't give them any more information about that. And it just was what it was. Some of them acted sus toward her. I think some of them thought she was maybe a spy. They did not think she was a dragon. I think one of the players had a little inkling that she was. But anyway, so boom, there we go. If immersion is important to the players, subtle roles might help or excite them. Yes, if we're looking for player immersion rather than story immersion, right? So I think these are two different levels of things. Dave says there's definitely going to be balance. Of course. Dave says, you're right. I don't need more to do, but occasionally it might be fun. Of course. If you think it's fun, and I'm not trying to knock this. I'm just trying to say that I think that the GM should think about this and they should understand that they're playing with different things when they do this. And this changes the way that they share information with the players. It is not wrong because every GM has a different style, right? This is part of why some players like playing with some GMs and some players don't like others. Some players may love subtle roles. They come into my game and they're like, there's no surprises here. You're not like, I don't feel immersed. Whereas some of my players might come into my sessions and think, I really love your sessions because I always feel like I have maximum player agency. So there's like different styles to play too, right? There's not a right or wrong. Or no, I'm sorry, Crossart says, agree, not all skill checks work as subtle roles. Surfer Dude says, I can see why subtle roles would be used. Can't say I'm a fan. To prevent one bad roll leading to everyone wanting to roll, maybe stipulate only one person can make the check for traps. Sometimes I'll do this. Sometimes if everyone wants to check, so like let's say one player says, I'm gonna check for traps, and then everyone else says, oh, me too. What I'll say is, okay, since like all of you are gonna make the check, what we're actually gonna do is I want one of you to roll the check, but you're gonna get the help action because everyone's helping. So then I'll say, literally, I'll say, you might want to figure out which one of you has the best modifiers so that they can roll the check, right? But you're all working together. So this is me again sharing information with the characters, but I'm setting a level on like what they can do. Because if the truth is, if you have 6 players and they all make every perception check, they all make every check for traps, I mean, nothing is going to be hidden from them. And that can also hurt immersion. That can hurt the story because that may not be realistic. Because the truth is, they may not all know to look for all those things. They may only know this because the players are doing a teeny tiny bit of metagaming without even realizing it, right? And this is another thing that I really love serious role players. They will take very seriously the role play elements of their character, and they might realize, I'm not going to participate in trap rolling because honestly, my character doesn't know anything about traps. They wouldn't even think to check for traps. And when they see people doing this, they're going to kind of shrug and be like, I think you guys are taking this too seriously. Like role players who are that immersive, I love those kinds of role players. I feel like that's what kind of role player I am. But it's also because I am a game master and I run games and I know what I like to see as far as immersive role play. I think that's what creates some of the most memorable moments are when players are just actually honest about what their characters would do. And they're more interested in telling the story than they are in just succeeding at everything and winning at everything. I think that we run into problems when players just want to win at everything in the game. This creates problems and it's not realistic or immersive, and it takes away from the goal of telling the story.